welcome to this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their industry insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Teresa Rosario-Hernandez. She's a creator, host, and queen behind Ride or Die from Teens to Prosecco Queens podcast. Welcome to the show, Teresa.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. Glad to be here.
You are welcome. Welcome to the show, Teresa. Welcome to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk right now. We will be talking about motherhood, we'll be talking about relationships, we'll talk also about self discovery. All this will learn a lot about your understanding of this. But before this, let's understand a bit about your journey, your background, so that people know who they are listening to.
Sure. Well, just a little bit about me. I I I grew up in New York. I've lived here in New Jersey as well most of my life, and I am a single mom of two. Through many tumultuous relationships, heartaches, marriages, professionalism, life, learning, love, right? I work multiple jobs. I'm also a professional, and I have my podcast, like as you graciously said, Ride or Die from Teens to Prosecco Queens, where I talk about my journey through all the years of love, happiness, health, life, health, anxiety, to self-discovery, parenthood, singledom, and trying to find out who you are when you never knew who that was.
Absolutely. So, Teresa, I want to understand how do you see you have lived your life till now? Was it just with the flow, or is it that you decided,
Mm,
okay, this is the direction you want to take, and you have been able to? Not everyone is able to.
yeah. For me, realistically, I thought I was doing certain things that I was supposed to do, and that wasn't the case. Unfortunately, I felt like I was always conforming to what others wanted me to be. And it wasn't until recently that I learned that. It wasn't until recently that I said, wait a second. As a kid, I did what I thought I was supposed to do. In my 20s, I got married and did all the things that you think you're supposed to do, went to college, became a mom as I thought I was supposed to do. In my 30s, after being divorced in my 20s, I got into another relationship, had another wonderful, beautiful child, was raising my family that I thought I married the love of my life. And all the things that you think you're supposed to do. And that didn't work out based on some addictions and stuff that my partner eventually had that came out as well. And then I find myself in my 40s going, this is not what I thought. When I look back, I also realize I don't think that I ever really thought about the direction I wanted my life to go. I don't believe I even had that conversation. I don't have any ideas. So in a way, as much as I conformed to what other people's wanted, I don't think that I necessarily even had a plan for myself.
Right, right. So, how do you see if you were to live the same life again? Would you be taking decisions differently? Would you want it to be a different life?
That's interesting because I've thought about that before more than once. And one thing I believe in is when something, I believe in fate. I believe in God's timing. I believe that some things are meant to be. I believe sometimes your path, even though you can adjust your path, I believe that sometimes your path is already kind of laid out for you. I always say, for me, the way I believe it for me is God has a plan for you. God has a plan for your life, right? It's not always great. But there's reasoning behind it. Some of us are able to find it, some of us aren't. Obviously, it's a lifelong journey. And if I think about every step that I took, if I took any step different, the highlight for me is my children. If anything else I could have lived without, right? I could have lived without going to college, fine. I could have figured something out, right? I could have lived without moving certain places or taking certain jobs. It probably wouldn't have affected my life as much if I had not made the decisions to be in those particular relationships as hard as they were, as much strife as it put me through. I would not have my children. And I know for a fact they belong to me. They were supposed to be with me. So even though there are moments that I sometimes go, if I did this differently, would I be here now? Then I also have to go back and say, I wouldn't have had my kids. And even though I'm raising them by myself technically now, I still would not regret those decisions because of them.
Right. Not about regretting decisions, but in fact, looking at things. Why I asked this was in terms of relationships seems to be a big thing, in today's life. But at
Yeah.
any stage in life, at any time and age, that is a very important. But nowadays, because of social media, it seems to be, the thing. People talk about relationships. People give advice as experts on relationship. I see all those shorts and reels that come to your attention, and want to understand then, how should people look at relationships in today's time. Many people think life is for experiment, so let's experiment as much. And a person at maybe 30 plus will look at it much more differently at the age of 40, because everyone seems to be struggling. I see several guests talking about, finding the love of your life at 40, finding the love of
Yeah.
your life at 50, how to have a
Yeah.
relationship at 60 and beyond.
Yeah.
So I want to understand then, if relationships are supposed to be so fulfilling, how do we keep to be continuously in search for the right one? That is where I want to understand your perspective on looking at life, choosing the right people around you.
That is such a good question. That is such a question because when I say regrets in the last segment is specifically in that light, it's because you sometimes look at the people you allow around you, right? And you make decisions. You in general, us people, humans, right? Part of the human experience is we make decisions a lot of times based on in that moment, right? Now they say, oh, plan for the future, don't live in the past. We all do things differently, but a lot of times in that moment when you're dating or you want to fall in love or any of those things, it's very hard to plan when that's going to happen, regardless of the fact that we have every online dating site. I think online dating is terrible. I did it for 24 hours. I was like, I'm done. I can't handle this. It is terrible. It's intimidating. It's horrifying. And don't get me wrong. I know there's thousands, probably millions of couples out there. I know some who have had very good relationships formed out of those, right? Somebody you might not have met in the street or somewhere. So I'm not knocking their experience. I think the experiences I had, it was very overwhelming. It was like, this is too much for me at the time. When it comes to doing this stuff as you get older, like I said, in your 20s, you might be out hanging out and you meet somebody and it's like, great, we're having a good time. In your 30s, you sometimes know a little better. When I got to now my 40s, after everything I've been through, after the relationships that have put me through trauma and we've had mental illness and there's been addiction and there's been all these things, I go, for me, do I really want to take the chance and go through that again? I'm like, sometimes I feel like I barely survived it the first time, the first two times. So thinking about doing it again or doing it as you get older, if it's for the first time, God bless you, because it's hard out there. I was one of the ones. I have been in master classes, and this dating person was a master class, and self heal yourself and find the love of your life. And this is probably over the past 2 years. I've spent money. I've spent money on psychics, and just because I'm like, I thought the second one was the love of my life. Okay, is he still, or is there still someone out there for me? And I think for no matter what age we are meant to believe that we need this fulfillment by somebody else. I'm not going to pretend that one day I wouldn't love, as my kids get older and my kids are older, that I wouldn't love to have a companion and someone that's with me, but I don't want any more of the drama. And a lot of times, that's what you're going to find out there because we all have histories. We all have past lives. In one lifetime, we all have past lives, right? We all may have kids. As you get older, it does get harder and it can be a little disheartening. But I implore anybody, if you're still looking for it, just be genuine about it. Be genuine about who you are and let other people be genuine as well. Because we're just, as we get older, there's just enough of the nonsense. It's just too much. It's just too much. And you're literally putting people's health, mental health, physical health in jeopardy with your past stuff and unhealed stuff. That's my thought about it. Try to get healed before you're looking to be with somebody else.
Absolutely, absolutely, Teresa. Well explained. Now, the dilemma of modern times is that, nothing wrong in looking for excitement. People want excitement. The funny part is they are looking for excitement in relationships.
Yeah.
Still okay. Then there is a lot of drama. It depends on. Sometimes you like it, you consider that it's an excitement part of
Yeah.
it. And then there is chaos. People sometimes consider that also excitement, a bit of drama, because there is so much of drama in our lives nowadays. Everything is, how does a person decide at an early age whether they are falling into the trap of drama, in the name of excitement, into the trap of uh, chaos, because that can turn out to be not so good decision in life, and those individual decisions will actually decide about your full life itself. Help us understand with your wisdom.
With my wisdom, I like that. I can say with my experience specifically is something that I learned again, self-awareness. So many of us are not self-aware. It's a practice. It's something that we're not raised to understand. And you're not going to be the same person you are in your 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s because life is going to change you. And I think when you seek out drama, a lot of times it's not something you're realizing, right? Because it's like a dopamine fix, like almost like you need drama. Some people need drama in relationships to feel like they're in a relationship, to feel like they're living. We all like adventure. I would love a relationship where, I'm able to go out and have a great time and someone plans something and I'm not always the only one planning it. You know what I'm saying? And we can go and try new things and travel and have a good time. That's a beautiful thing. That's normal, right? When you're seeking drama, that means there's something inside of you that's unhealed. Not necessarily by any fault of your own, by any fault of our own. We get sometimes pushed into these relationships again because of patterns, old patterns that we have that we may not be aware of. And that's why I think self awareness and learning who you are is so important. It's a journey. I'm not 100% of who I'm supposed to be. I may have been who I was supposed to be with my 20s, but it got changed because of circumstances beyond and out of my control at the time. So it's about who am I in this moment? What am I seeking in this moment? And what will I not allow? Because that's the other thing, too. If you're creating particular boundaries for yourself, it's easier to avoid excess drama because of that, because of saying, listen, I'm not dealing with this. This is a red flag for me. A lot of us, when we're younger, we're like, oh, red flag. Now we're just going to pretend it doesn't happen. And the next thing you know, your house is burning down. And as we get older, that just becomes more dangerous. It's not a life to live in longevity. We should just try our best to be self-aware and understand how we are projecting ourselves out by healing ourselves from within.
Absolutely. So, what is the right age for self discovery? Does it happen, has to happen after, say, around 50, or self discovery should be? Because once you know yourself, you will know the word.
Yeah, I think it's like I said, it's a journey, right? You are, depending upon your circumstances, you are always going to not fundamentally change who you are, because we know there are people out there that are resistant to change no matter what. They don't want to hear anything. They don't want to hear wisdom. They don't want to hear advice. They don't want to learn any facts. We know it's a huge problem in this world, as facts are now completely what anybody wants to make of them, right? And so, from what I think is that learning who you are fundamentally is very important, and who you want to be. And I don't mean what career you want to have. I don't mean how many kids you want to have. I don't mean anything like that. I mean, who do you want to be as a person? How do you want people to see you? And when you look in the mirror, who do you see? For so long, I would look in the mirror, just recently in the past few years, for a long time, and I wouldn't even recognize who I was, because I had given so much to somebody else that I completely it took out my soul. It got sucked right out of me, and I didn't know what was happening. So what I'm doing now in this very moment is saying, okay, right now in my early 40s, who do I want to be for myself? Who do I want to be for my kids so that I can be the best for them? And again, I may not be, if God gives me life, I may not be the same person in my 50s. Fundamentally, I'll always be a good person because that's who I am. I know who I am. But am I going to have the same feelings about dating and other things in my 50s? Those are the kind of things that I think evolve. And we have to be open to that change. And a lot of people are not open to evolving and being that change.
Right. People look at life at every stage differently, and they have to take everything along. How do you then
Yeah.
balance everything with whatever you have got? In your case, you have got two kids, you've got to look at, you are a podcast host now, so many things at the same time. Managing life can be tough many a times, even
Yeah.
for people who have got many resources. It can be tough, but with little
Yeah.
resources, it can be a bit of a different ways. How do you do that? What is your understanding, wisdom here again for the people?
Well, you are definitely correct. I'm the first to say I'm blessed because I have a support system around me that helps me when I need it, right? But yes, mostly it is me and my children and working through our schedules. I have an 18-year-old, I have an 8-year-old. They are very different points in their lives. So I'm just like stuck in the middle and I'm like, let's just make it one day at a time. And I think that's what a lot of us have trouble understanding is we can only go one day at a time. As a mother or as a dominant parent, let's be realistic, in any relationship there's a dominant parent. There is so much to juggle, from schedules 6 months in advance to doctor's appointments to school plays to who's going to volunteer for this and who's going to be the PTA president. Not me, because I can't even think of a time that I could even breathe, let alone be a PTA president. But God bless those people that can do it. And I think that's a big part of it. We're putting too much emphasis on things that may not be as important. I have tried to say every once in a while, you know what? There's a few hours that we don't have anything. Let's just chill. I'm just relaxing for a few because it doesn't happen all the time, right? We're very meticulous when it comes to our scheduling as well. And if we have to say no to things, full stop. No is a full stop. I can't be everywhere. I can't even be virtually everywhere. And the reason I'm able to
Absolutely.
juggle my professional job, I have two part-time jobs and I have the podcast on top of that, is because I try to make that time in there because that's beneficial for me as well. Doing my podcast is beneficial for me because not only does it help me have these open conversations, it's healing. It's a healing journey for me also. So it takes time, it takes planning, it takes self-care, which I still struggle with every day, but learning to put yourself first at times is what's going to help you when you're taking care of everybody else. Simple as that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how do you bring those right sort of people around you? Maybe not those sort of relationship, but in terms of building, friends, building
Yeah.
a circle around you, building that protective layer around you.
Yeah,
How did you do it for yourself? You just said that you have a support system.
I do. I do. I'm very blessed. I say that so often. We were just together yesterday for Thanksgiving, all of us, because I was raised with just a very close knit. There's about 8 or 9 of us, very, very close knit. And we've always been like that. And our kids now are very close knit. And on top of that, including them, I have my parents, thank God, are still around, and I have my sister, who are very active in mine and my kids' lives. And so I have people that if I really need to call on somebody, I can say, listen, I really need help with this. I just can't juggle it. I can't take care of it. When it comes to meeting other people, my son is young and I did the same thing when my daughter was young, is you have no choice but during sports and school meeting other parents. I'm not always the most social person. I'm very comfortable putting my headphones in and just listening to music and going away in my head for about an hour if I'm able to. But I've learned that it is easier to get to know some of the parents so you can be there for each other when you need it as the kids are getting older than to kind of say, I don't really want to be a social person. For example, one of the parents that I know very well from my son's school, Monday I have a conflict and I'm like, I cannot take my son to school. His father can't take him. Would you mind if you take him with the boys? And he was like, of course. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh my God, I appreciate it because I know that I would do the same. You know what I'm saying? So it's just having people that you feel you can count on who are willing to help you and you're willing to help them when you can. That's the easiest way to get through this journey. Like they say, it takes a village. It really does.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's much to learn from you, Teresa, and I'm sure a lot of people would want to learn from you, also from your podcast, Ride or Die, from teens to Prosecco Queens. What is this Prosecco Queens? And tell us a bit more about your podcast.
Sure, thank you. So as of 2025, it will just be Prosecco Queens podcast. I'm changing it. It started back with one of my childhood friends a couple years ago, and that's what we're talking about, that we're ride or die. We're there for each other. Now the Prosecco Queens part comes almost like ladies lunching. Right?
Okay.
It's almost like if you're sitting there with a glass of wine, a Bellini, a cup of coffee, tea, whatever you want, and you're there with your girls, your friends, your male friends, doesn't matter. That you're just sitting there having these open-minded conversations. Part of what I talk about in my podcast is so many different things. I highlight so many different conversations and different guests. A lot of people that I know personally, some friends that I've been meeting, right? That I can say that we get to know each other's journeys and everything from mental health, colored communities. We talk about education. We talk about women's health. We talk about men's health. We talk about dating, spirituality, which is huge because I'm a huge spiritual person. We talk about different forms of spirituality as well. So it's really conversation. We try to be funny, lighthearted. I love to laugh and have a good time, even in some of the hardest conversations. We talk about people who have survived things like I have, like narcissistic abuse, and different types of abuse, and have people who are on there who are not only survived it but know how to thrive off of it. And that's what I really want the goal of my podcast to be, is to show that we don't only have to just survive through things, we can still thrive through them, and we can continue to do that as long as God gives us life. As long as we have breath in our bones, we can continue to thrive.
Absolutely. Uh, as I said, there is much to learn from you, from your podcast. So, for all those people who'd want to connect with you, what's the best way for them to do so?
Well, there's a couple ways. I have my email, which is Prosecco Queens Podcast at gmail.com. Prosecco as in the sparkling wine. It's Prosecco. Also, I am on Instagram. That's my main podcast page. It's Prosecco Queens Podcast, or at Prosecco Queens Podcast. My daughter got me on TikTok. So good luck to anybody. I'm watching that, but that's also at Prosecco Queens podcast, and we are on YouTube. We are recorded on YouTube, so we have the video up on YouTube as well at Prosecco Queens podcast. You can like, share, follow. Please do. We are looking to grow a community. I do it on my own, so it is a lot of work. It's a labor of love, but I do love it. Um, and reach out to me. I mean, I love to have ideas about what other show ideas to do, guests to have on, and I'm looking forward to seeing the growth. And it's slow growth, but growth is growth, and that's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Thank you.